Hi folks, this video will probably be of interest to you if you've got a Freelander pre-2001 model. This is a 1998 model. It had all the prop shaft and four-wheel drive installed when I brought this model. I've never had one before, so it was a new thing to me. And what the symptoms I was getting with it was on full lock, either reversing or driving forward, like when you're parking, it would act as though you was putting the brake on or the handbrake was on, because it wouldn't roll forward. So that was really the only symptoms I've had with it, and I just put it down to being a four-wheel drive vehicle, that's all, because I'd never owned a four-wheel drive vehicle before. Anyway, I've drove it for about 4 months now, I suppose, and in that 4 months I've probably covered 3,000 miles in total and not had any problems. So we've done loads and loads of miles in it, and that was the only thing I'd really noticed with it. It was poor petrol performance. It was probably doing probably about 25 to the gallon. So other than that, it's had no real problems. It's had a new head gasket, but this is about the problems I've now ensued and what I've done to overcome, or started to overcome, these problems. So I drove it out of the drive the other day, and as we were going down the road, my wife smelt what we thought was gas. So anyway, we drove about 10-20 miles and we thought it was just a gas smell. She says, no, the smell is coming from the car. So over the last week we noticed that there was a funny smell of gas, and we put it down to just a gas leak outside because we'd had the windows open and it was summer. Anyway, cut a long story short, we carried on driving the car. There was no problems at all. Same old problem with regards to parking or reversing. Tight, very tight steering, on full lock that is, by the way. Anyway, pulled out of the drive the other day after about a week of this smell, wondering where it's coming from. Got down the road. There was a loud cracking noise, and then the car started hesitating and then whining heavily. So, lucky enough, I was just round the corner. I drove the car home and knew that somewhere down the line I had a problem. There was no sign of any oil, apart from when I went under the car. The smell, I found out what the smell was. The smell was oil coming out of the IRD unit and dripping onto the exhaust. So that was the smell. That was the horrible smell we smelled. It was only a slight drip. There wasn't a constant stream or anything like that. So obviously then, I didn't know about Freelander, so I went online, I found the forum and looked on what this possible problem could be. The first thing I located was that the VCU, viscous coupling in the middle of the prop shaft, is what causes this problem. So I saw that was about a £300 unit. And I also read that a lot of people convert their cars to a two-wheel drive instead of a four-wheel drive by removing part of the rear prop or taking the whole lot out. So I decided that I wouldn't bother spending out paying for a new central viscous coupling. I decided that we would convert it to a two-wheel drive because we don't use it for off-road anyway, and we'd also get an improved fuel consumption. So I found on eBay one of these things. Now this thing obviously is the blanking plate from when you take your whole prop shaft out, and on the back of the IRD unit you basically take the collar off that provides the drive to the prop shaft, and you basically smear around the edge of that and then put that on the IRD unit, and then that seals off the oil and the rear prop shaft, and you're left with just a two-wheel drive vehicle. So that was what I decided. So I went out and bought that for about £14 off of eBay. I then got the job of removing the prop shaft. So again, all I had was the Haynes manual or some information off of the forum, one of the Landrover forum. Now, this is only any good if you've got a problem like I said I had. For example, that your central viscous unit was knackered, and one of the ways that you can test that obviously is full lock, either driving forward or reversing. Your car comes like it wants to go to a standstill and stop at low speed. That's what it wants to do when you're turning on full lock. So if you've got that problem and you also have got quite heavy fuel consumption, then by removing the prop shaft and the viscous coupling and basically putting that on the back of your IRD unit is the way to go, and keep your vehicle as a two-wheel drive, and you should get better fuel economy. Well, as I mentioned to you, there was something else which happened to my vehicle. Although I've been having the problem with the steering for a while with regards to tight steering on full lock, I had this crack and I also had this smell previous to that week of gassy sort of smell, and after the crack then there was a heavy whining in the front drive system, and that's why then I decided that first of all I might be able to get away with it. Now when I took the drain plug out of the IRD unit, no oil come out whatsoever, so obviously the IRD unit had been running dry. So basically just putting a blanking plate on there and filling up obviously meant that I had another problem. So it was time to look for another solution, which is going to be more expensive, and that is to actually remove and replace the IRD unit. Now, all I had was the Haynes manual and the information on the forum. The Haynes manual tells you to do certain things that aren't really necessary. Now, I'll show you what I've done, or I'm halfway through the procedure now. I haven't got the unit out yet, but I'll show you what I've done, which is slightly different than the Haynes manual. So that's what I'm going to do now. First of all, here's the actual that's the rear prop shaft. There's the two mounting bearings in the centre of the car. There's the viscous coupling unit. There's the front prop shaft. There's the front prop shaft flange mount. And there's the bit that goes into the IRD unit. So don't forget, this is all bolted in the car when I got it. So initially all I wanted to do was to remove this whole prop shaft from under the car and then disconnect this unit, pull this out of the IRD box and just put a plate in its place, and all this unit then becomes redundant because it's all heavy weight and added weight, and you're then left with a two-wheel drive vehicle. I couldn't do that. If you actually look closely to this, once I pulled this out, this was another thing I noticed as well. Let's put this up here for a minute. I don't know if you can see, where is it? Where is that pinion? There we go. Now I don't know if you can see that. It's been running dry obviously, but there's a massive crack down there, and that crack, I had a trouble pulling this out. Obviously because this is spread open a bit, so I had to really hit on this with a club hammer to pull this out. I would imagine this would normally pull out pretty easily, but that crack also carries on into the body of the actual IRD unit, so it must have got very, very hot for it to expand or whatever. So obviously that's the unit's got to come out. But if you're going to convert it to a two-wheel drive, that unit's got to come out of the back of the IRD unit. All this prop shaft comes out. Certain places say that you've got to chock all four wheels up. Well, as you can see here, two wheels are on the ground and I've only got two wheels up in the air. You don't really have to put it up on all four wheels. I've done I've done all of this work with it just on two axle stands at the front. So don't forget, this is a pre-2001 model. So what I did, the reason why I think they tell you you've got to do all four wheels is so that you can actually rotate the prop shaft. Well, I got the prop shaft out. Let me get under the car. I got the prop shaft out as it is now. You obviously, when the back two wheels are on the ground, you obviously can't rotate the prop shaft. But I was able to get a socket on the two bolts at the top of the rear flange. That's the one you want to undo first, by the way. So there's four bolts on the rear flange and they're Torx bolts, and then you hold the back of them with a 13mm spanner. I did have two of us underneath it. I undone the four bolts, which again I think they're 13mm, either side of the central viscous unit there. There's these four bolts there, one that side and two on that beam there for the front and rear bearings. So you undo them, and I just left one in either side, diagonally, just to take the weight of the bearing. As I say, it is a two-man job really to lift the prop out. Although I did it on my own, I think. I had my son with me, but I think I did this unit actually on my own. So that's that part. And going to the front of the car, and I actually have managed to undo all of them bolts there, all of these nuts here. Again, first of all, I had the collar, which was here, and we undone all of around there again with a universal joint and the Torx bit to separate the prop shaft from this IRD box. So once we actually lifted the prop shaft out of the way, we had obviously that pinion gear which I showed you, which had the crack in it, and I don't know whether you can see there, but where my finger is, there's an actual crack there as well. So anyway, I withdrew all of this without taking the exhaust out or anything like that. Now obviously the next thing was to get the IRD box out. Now the first thing, one of the first things they tell you to do is to disconnect the two hoses up there, which I did to the IRD unit, the cooling hoses there. And let me come out now, go around the front of the car. As you can see, I've got things tied up. Now the Haynes manual tells you that you have to remove this big nut here. Now this big nut obviously is about 280 foot-pounds on there, and not only that, it's a massive socket. I didn't have one in my toolkit, which I've got there, and so Mr. Average Home Mechanic probably won't have one either. So I read on one of the forums that you don't actually need to take that off, so I just went along with that, and I just made sure that I'd pulled my hoses out of this clip mechanism there, and as you can see, the hoses there are still the ABS wire is still connected, the brake line hose is still connected, and all I did there was undo these two bolts here, either side of the shock that holds the front hub, and basically just levered it forward. And once I levered it forward to get the drive shaft out, I initially first tried prising it out here, and it would not come. I kept jolting it and jolting it and jolting it, it wouldn't come. The bottom line was the reason why it wouldn't come was because that you basically need pressure on opposite sides. So all I done then was to put a screwdriver, I haven't got a screwdriver here at the moment, I had a screwdriver coming in from the other side, and I was levering on both together, and then this drive shaft actually popped out. So as you can see on the end of that drive shaft there, there's a circlip there, which apparently is what locates it. That's supposed to change that. I haven't damaged any seals or anything around the actual IRD unit. Anyway, it's going to be replaced anyway. So I got to that stage, and as you can see, the other things holding it on that you have to remove is basically brackets. You've got these brackets down here, which I've taken out. That's the one that holds the IRD unit to the actual engine, and then you've got that smaller bracket at the back, which is the tie rod bracket. So first of all, you then have to take this bolt out of this tie rod, and the reason why you have to do that is because you can't get to the bottom bolts on the IRD unit. There's 5 bolts around the outside there, 3 on the bottom and 2 on the top. So you have to take that bolt out of there, lower that down, and then you remove that bracket there. As you can see, that one there, that bracket actually comes off the way you're looking at it now. So there's the 2 bolts there, and there's the thing that goes around there. And the IRD bracket again comes off, and as you can see, those are the 5 bolts. This is the way it comes off. Those are the 3 bottom bolts, and there's 2 top bolts. Well, on my one I actually had a top bolt missing as well. That bolt there is an awkward one, and these bolts here are what bolt onto the underside of the engine, which is basically down there underneath here. Basically, you can't see them at this angle. So yeah, I mean, I've done all this, and I've got to this stage now. So all I've got to do now, hopefully, is undo the 4 main bolts that hold the IRD unit in, and there's apparently 2 at the bottom of the engine and 2 at the top. So I just basically wanted to show you that you don't have to split this drive shaft, or you can just hang it up like this. You can leave these connected, you leave your brake line connected. Look, it's nice and slack. There's enough slack there. That's just hanging on the wishbone, and the hub is still on there. And you really do need to have a lever put in there. I used the crowbar, that fitted in there perfectly basically. So I had the crowbar in there, levering, and then coming in from the top angle, I had a big screwdriver and just levering one against the other, and this drive shaft just popped out. So that might seem difficult, but that actually, levering it from one side, there was no way was it coming out. So you really do need to go at both sides with that, opposing sides, and then that will come out pretty easy. So I'm going to now do the 4 bolts and undo the 4 bolts to the IRD unit. All I've got left is to, where are we? All I've got left is to actually put the jack. I need a block of wood in here to just hold the weight of the IRD unit on the jack. I'm nearly on full level on my jack there, that's why I need a block of wood. And when I undo the 4 bolts which are the other side, I'm presuming that the IRD unit will slide this way, and then hopefully I can put it out through that gap there in the chassis. I'm not too sure what way exactly it comes out, but that's only 4 bolts now holding it on. I haven't taken off the front down manifold as it says in the manual as well, but I may have to. Yeah, I'm just, as I say, this is how I'm approaching it. I've never done this before. I'm just exercising a little bit of common sense, and so far this is the stage I've got to. So I'll let you know if I have to drop the exhaust out in a further video. Hope this has been of some use to you.